Commission. I am Roberta Jorgensen, Chairman of the Commission. Please note that due to the COVID-19 emergency and in compliance with the state and county shelter-at-home orders and as allowed by the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, which allows for a deviation of teleconference rules required by the Ralph M. Brown Act, Planning Commission meetings will be held by teleconference only until further notice. A video stream of Planning Commission meeting presentations will be live streamed and available to play later on YouTube by accessing the following link, www.prcity.com/YouTube. Rather than attending in person, project applicants and members of the public must call 805-865-7276 to participate via phone. The phone line will open just prior to the start of the meeting at 6:30 p.m. or written public comments can be submitted via email to planning@prcity.com. Written comments received prior to 12 noon on the day of the meeting will be posted as an addendum to the agenda online at www.prcity.com/agenda center/planning-commission-5. If submitting written comments in advance of the meeting, please note the agenda item. All right, so I call this meeting to order. And Commissioner Neal, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and would all others mute your mics?
I sure will, and I'll begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Neal. Staff, may we have roll call?
Commissioner Castillo. Commissioner Christensen.
Here.
Commissioner Davis. Commissioner Gibson.
Here.
Commissioner Kogler.
Here.
Commissioner Neal.
Here.
Chairperson Jorgensen.
Here.
The record will reflect that Commissioner Castillo and Davis are absent.
And I will note that they both gave us notice ahead of the meeting. May we have staff introductions, please?
Yes, Warren Frace, Community Development Director. With me tonight is David Athy, the City Engineer, Darcy Delgado, our Associate Planner. Jessica Ferguson is helping us out with the secretarial efforts, and then Dave McHugh is here for IT.
All right, thank you. I don't see on our list that there are any general public comments regarding matters not on the agenda. And so we will move on to agenda items proposed to be tabled or rescheduled, if there are any.
There are none.
All right, thank you. All right, so let's begin with the public hearing. I'll open the public hearing at this time. Agenda item number 1. Appeal APL 20-04 of Sign Plan SGN 20-13, P20-0058, Valero Gas Station Sign Plan. May we have the staff report?
Madam Chair, could we hold 1 second? We've got a little computer thing we got to work out. Give us 1 second.
Certainly.
Okay, we're ready to go.
All right. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. This is Darcy. I'll be giving the staff presentation. So this item is an appeal of the sign plan for Valero Gas Station, which was previously approved by the Development Review Committee. The site is located at 2340 Spring Street at the intersection of 24th and Spring Streets. So on October 12th, the DRC approved a sign plan for the Valero gas station with the following modifications as part of their approval. So the sign plan would have to utilize reverse lit or halo lit channel letters on the fuel canopies. The V logos could be both internally lit and halo lit on the fuel canopies. The monument sign would need to utilize an opaque background, but the letters and the logo could illuminate as translucent. If there was a requirement to remove all light bars from the canopies. And lastly, a fleet sign was permitted as part of that plan as long as it was under 2 square feet. So then an appeal letter was received on October 21st requesting that the Planning Commission consider the following. To allow use of internally illuminated channel letters for the Valero signs on those on the fuel canopies, and also to allow use of light bars on the fuel canopies. So as part of the applicant's request, they're wanting to use the internally illuminated wall-mounted signs for the Valero letters. So here is their proposed sign plan, and I've circled in red the letters that they're wanting to illuminate. These occur in a variety of elevations on their sign plan for the fuel canopy. They're also requesting to keep the illuminated light bars that would illuminate the pump island canopies. So here's just an example of a Valero gas station, similar to what the applicant is requesting. However, I'll note that this shows a slightly different Valero sign. It doesn't appear to be individual channel letters, but more similar to a cabinet. And then also, this is just an example of what the Valero signage would look like at night. And so, again, the light bar, and then in this case, the Valero sign appears to be more like a cabinet as opposed to individual letters. So this site is subject to the Uptown Town Center Specific Plan Sign Standards, and that's Chapter 5.6. Those standards say that illuminated signs designed to be seen from a distance are inappropriate and are discouraged. And then also the use of most backlit plastic box signs or internally illuminated signs or awnings is discouraged. So staff's interpretation is that the internally illuminated channel letter signs, such as what the applicant is requesting, are designed to be seen from a distance and are therefore considered inappropriate at this location. Additionally, staff's interpretation is that the proposed light bar is another method of illumination designed to draw attention from a distance, and therefore it's also discouraged. So on this slide, I've included some examples of how the front lit channel letters illuminate compared to the reverse lit, or otherwise known as halo lit channel letters. In this case, the reverse lit sign type was suggested by staff for the Valero signage on their fuel canopies, since it is not designed to be seen from a distance and therefore would comply with a specific plan. So the commission has a few options before you tonight. So the first would be to deny the appeal and uphold the DRC's action of October 12th, thereby approving the sign plan with the modifications as approved by the DRC. Another option would be to grant the appeal by approving the sign plan with changes to the method of illumination for the channel letters on the fuel canopies so that they could be internally lit, and also allowing the light bars on those canopies as provided by Mr. Pablo, the applicant. Other options might be to modify the decision of the DRC in making changes to that sign plan, or to provide alternative direction to staff. As written in the staff report, staff recommends option 1. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Darcy. So I will do a roll call of the commission for questions to staff, starting with Commissioner Kogler. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, just a couple. So, Darcy, the sole focus of the appeal is the canopy itself, both the Valero lettering and the light bar. Those are the only items really that are being disputed. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the light bar, as I just came to see from the visual example as much as anything else, is the blue area that's on the canopy face itself.
Yes. So let me go back to that slide. So
yeah, right there. Mm-hmm. So the background on the Valero, is that just kind of a white aluminum or something? It's some kind of a material that the letters are fixed to in some fashion?
Right. So the canopy is wrapped with like a vinyl. So the yellow and the blue kind of slashes would be adhered to the canopy, but the light bar and then the Valero letters would project out, and those are what are being appealed, or I guess in question tonight.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. That's all the questions I have at the moment.
All right, Commissioner Neal, questions?
No questions at this time.
Commissioner Christensen?
I have no questions at this time. Thank you.
Commissioner Gibson?
I have no questions of staff. I have questions of the applicant and comments, so I'll hold at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, then I will open the public hearing, and if the applicant or the applicant's representative would like to speak, this would be the time.
Yes, this is Sal Pablo, Sign Development.
Please go ahead.
Yes, a few things because we noticed around this Bolero gas station. We a couple of blocks down, going south from this Bolero location, there is a AutoZone and Smart and Final stores, and we noticed that they do also have channel letters, and I believe that they looks like they're internally illuminated, similar to what we have there right now as far as the Bolero letters, the existing letters.
And this is Bobby O'Hara as well from Sign Development. Just briefly, going back to the specific standards that were referenced in the staff report, item 3 is highlighted and has been noted as one of the reasons for denying the channel letters on the canopy. But further along in item 3, it does state use of individual plastic letters that are compatible in size and style with the building will be considered on a case-by-case basis. And being that the Valero letters are integral to the Valero image, which is a nationwide, actually international image, we're asking for staff to consider the fact that the inclusion of those letters is important to the overall image from Valero Station to Valero Station.
Okay, do you two gentlemen have any other comments, or should we go to questions?
This is Bobby O'Hara again. I have nothing else. Sal, I don't think.
Yeah, again, want to point out also that the staff at the previous meeting, they did point out there is like 3 service stations down the road heading towards Highway 101. There's like the Chevron, the Shell, and the Arco. They do also have some sort of illumination on their canopy fascia. So I want to point those out too, that they were able to get the illumination on their fascia.
Okay, so Commissioner Kogler, do you have questions of the applicant?
None of the applicant per se, Madam Chair. I may have some staff questions and comments yet upcoming.
Okay, and Commissioner Neal?
None of the applicant.
All right, Commissioner Christensen?
None of the applicant.
And Commissioner Gibson?
Yeah, thank you. So on page 11 on the bottom of the agenda, there's an example of the front lit internal channel letter, and then also the reverse lit halo lit channel letters. And the illustration would indicate that the SP is black. And when I drove around last night and I looked at the examples that staff gave me of reverse halo lit channel letters and then some additional ones we found. So we drove pretty much all the way around the west side of Paso looking at signs. I noted that every without exception, halo lit channel letter, the letters, regardless of what they actually were black. For example, a pizza place had red letters, but at nighttime it presents as black. So is it possible, gentlemen, that you actually could have the letters halo lit that they didn't end up being black, that they actually were the Valero teal color?
Sir, not without actually having the faces themselves be illuminated as well.
Okay, so that was kind of what I was suspecting. So anyway, that's my only question for the applicants. I just confirmed what we were seeing last night. Thank you.
Okay, This is Commissioner Jorgensen. I have a couple of questions. Darcy, could you put up that rendering again of the canopy? Thank you. I have a question for the applicants. There was another image actually before this, but I think we can see it on here, that the Valero seems to be one piece with the letters accentuated, yet yours is individual letters. So if we're trying to keep the Valero brand consistent, what's the Valero brand?
That's a great question. So what you're seeing on your screen there, that's actually, that was a prototype that was done by Valero, and there are a significant amount of stations that look exactly like that. The one there has a radius curved fascia. That is when there is a 36-inch canopy fascia. The entire fascia itself is curved, so that Valero word mark or sign, that's actually set within the curved fascia. It's unique to that size canopy fascia. What we're showing here, this is a flat canopy fascia, and the Valero copy or the word mark, they do not offer that with that particular usage of the canopy. One additional note just to point out is that this service station is an existing Valero, and has had for however many years, has had the internally illuminated Valero letters.
All right, I think I don't see any public comments. So I will, thank you, gentlemen. I will close the public hearing. And I believe Commissioner Kogler, didn't you mention that you had a question of staff?
Excuse me, Madam Chair, I do. The applicant's presentation, they referenced a number of existing gas stations within the community that are in more of a downtown Spring Street kind of setting rather than a freeway associated facility. And I'm curious, is it an issue of timing that those were all approved some time ago, or have those more recently been approved where we've allowed this style of illuminated lettering?
Sure. And I didn't quite catch which locations were specifically called out. Did you happen to catch that?
Smart and Final and an auto parts store.
There was a reference at a gas station. Chevron was one, which strikes me as being freeway. And I don't know if any of the rest of them were, the Sinclair was not mentioned, so it's not that one. I'm not sure what they had referenced as examples.
Sure. So I was trying to do a little bit of research before tonight. So Chevron is close to the freeway. That's at 24th and the freeway right there. So I think off the top of my head, they're probably in the Riverside corridor zone, but they are also located next to the freeway. So I think in that case, we would tend to see, signage that would draw more attention and be illuminated. I think that's where the case by case basis, that one really makes sense because we understand that the highway, the gas stations are trying to get attention to the drivers on the highway to get off in time. So the two pictures I have on the screen are the Sinclair gas station at 11th and Spring, and then the third base at 15th and Spring. Both of these recently went through the DRC process, and I think it shows some examples of the signage that we ended up with. So with Sinclair, they really only, I think, updated the monument sign. They didn't do any other signage on the building. They also were limited on their canopy. This was also historical, designated historical building. So they were there were some challenges with that, but so we didn't see a lot of signage there come through. And then the third base gas station at 15th and Spring. I know I was able to, you can't see it in this photo, but closer to the building entrance, there's some neon lighting, which is another method of illumination that we see in the specific plan. It doesn't draw attention from a distance. I can't tell what the illumination is on the for the car wash sign or those two little signs on the fuel canopy, but then you can see their monument sign. So these are two, I would say, fairly recent examples that they've gone through the process, and we're not seeing that. It is a different approach than what we've seen from Valero. In regard to method of illumination. The other signs that are along the Spring Street corridor for service stations, I think have just been retrofitting of the monument signs to get that LED component.
Thank you. I guess I'm unmoved by an argument of one size fits all architecture or signage and how that fits into Spring Street. So just because the station is done somewhere or everywhere else is not an argument for me to sway me to support this. The light bar itself, I find to be consistent with, my thinking would be consistent with staff, that in this setting, that's not appropriate. The style of the letter, and particularly the ability of the business to portray its name in its corporate colors, I'm not as locked into that. I think that maybe is a reasonable approach here, so that it would be lettering similar to what's shown there. But I do believe the light bar itself is drawing undue attention to something in a lower speed pedestrian kind of zone. That's my current thinking. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Neal, did you have any comments?
I have a question on if anybody at this meeting was on DRC when this came forward and what their thinking was.
I was.
I was there at the DRC meeting as well. This is Christensen.
I think that, well, I'll speak for myself, that the thinking was this is not a freeway gas station. You can't see this from the freeway. And the light bar I found particularly incompatible with the neighborhood. There's no point to it. It is, it's within, a kind of a neighborhood business area. It's not for travelers on the highway going north and south on the 101. The level of light from the light bar would be inappropriate, and I was not in favor of it.
This is Commissioner Christensen. I concurred with Commissioner, with the chairwoman, and one thing though, I did drive around as Commissioner Gibson did, and was taking note of signage on Spring that's backlit, and I agree. His point is valid. It's very hard to tell the color of what it is on some of those signs, or a lot of those signs, to be honest with you. I was opposed to the light bar. I think, in my opinion, it was something that was a little more than needed there, especially since they planned on having downlighting. As for the signage for the actual word valero, we have more here than we had at the DRC meeting, in the sense, like, I didn't have this. I don't remember seeing this picture there. Maybe it was, and I just didn't remember it. But the example they're showing for the night photo, it's obviously different than what staff's asking them to do, and different than what they're proposing. To me, it would seem like the perfect solution. It's really too bad that the applicant can't make that happen, because in my mind, that looks very amenable to me. Other than that, I don't know what to say, but I'm kind of leaning more towards allowing them to have the letters be a little bit brighter, because it is really hard to see any coloring on those around town. That's my view at this point.
Madam Chair, this is Darcy. I wanted to just quickly update the commission. When staff was initially working on the sign plan before it went to the DRC, they were requesting more of this sign that you see for the Valero letters, more of that cloud cabinet type thing. So staff recommended they move in the direction of the individual channel letters, because they could be, because of that recommendation for the reverse halo lit. So let me just make that clear that this was actually what they initially wanted.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gibson, did you have any other comments?
Yeah, just to build upon what I said earlier and Commissioner Christensen's remarks. So, I mean, as example, about a block away, there's the Little Caesars Pizza, and they have that halo lit channel letters. And I knew they weren't black, but I had to get really, really close to see what their true colors are. And when I saw that they were red, I go, of course, Little Caesars colors are red. So I think when you're doing marketing, the color branding is huge, and especially when we're talking about not just a national, but an international branding. think we have to be fair, reasonable with the applicant. I can go either way with the light bar. We did drive down Spring Street, and I noted that I didn't see any service stations that had canopies lit with the light bars. Conversely, I think what they're referring to is going the other way because it's on an axis of transportation in the town, is that the 24th Street corridor, other than the service station across the street from this one is not canopy lit, but the other one's going towards the highway all are in some fashion or another. But I could go either way with the light bar. But my feeling is that what's up on the screen right now, that Valero, however they do it, I mean, I really don't care. I mean, single letters or one unit, or I'm not a light person. That's why I was asking, what would it take to get that? I think to be reasonable to the applicant, the color and the Valero needs to show up, even to comply with, I'm sure, their licensing agreement to be a franchise. So those are my thoughts. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'll just reiterate my comment that this is not a freeway service station. Can't even see it from the freeway, and the light bar seems completely out of place to me. So at this point, I would entertain a motion.
I guess I will give it a try. This is Commissioner Neal.
Thank you.
I move approval of modifying the decision of the DRC by, let's see, sorry, I'm thinking here. Removing or let me restart. I'd like to make a motion on this item, approving the DRC's or agreeing with the DRC's position on the light bar and adjusting the position or suggesting the individually illuminated letters for the Valero name to match the Valero branding requirements or concepts. That makes sense?
Yes, I think so.
This is Commissioner Gibson. I will second that.
All right. So motion by Commissioner Neal and second by Commissioner Gibson. Would staff like to read that back and maybe formalize the language a little bit for us?
Yeah, so I think from staff's perspective, we believe the motion would be basically to approve Resolution A rewritten that it grants the appeal, allowing the internally illuminated sign on the canopy, but continuing to prohibit installation of the light bar.
That's exactly what I said.
That's what I thought.
That's what I heard him say too, so.
Okay, we're in agreement. All right. Are there any other comments by commissioners? All right, hearing none, I will ask for the roll call vote.
Commissioner Neal.
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson.
Aye.
Commissioner Kogler.
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen.
Aye.
Chairperson Jorgensen.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, thank you. We will go on to agenda item number 2. Continued public hearing from October 27th, 2020. Plan Development 19-14, P19-0129, 408 3rd Street. May we have the staff report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Again, this is Darcy. So this is a development plan For a multifamily development, I will note the project was continued from the October 27th hearing due to the neighbors within 300 feet of the subject parcel not receiving adequate notice of the meeting. And so prior to this meeting, new public hearing notices were sent out. So the project site is located at the southeast intersection of 3rd Street and Olive Street. It's a partially developed lot, just under half an acre. It has a general plan land use designation of low density residential multifamily, or RMF8, and it's within the R2 multifamily zoning district. So the project request is to construct a 3-unit triplex on the site, which already has an existing 3-unit triplex. So the existing building was recently converted from a church and was required to go through our development review process as a site plan review, since our threshold for triggering planning commission is currently 5 units or more. So we went through that process to get the 3-unit triplex approved. They are working on the building. It hasn't quite yet finished, but it's in progress. The additional 3 units triggered the planning commission threshold for review, and so that's why this project is here tonight. So here are just a few photos of the existing triplex, and as I had mentioned, it's not yet finished, but it's looking more like a multifamily project and less like a church. And then here's the proposed site plan showing both the existing building and then the new building, which I've outlined for you. I've called out the large 32-inch blue oak tree that's along the property frontage, as well as the proposed fencing plan, and then there's also a fence detail provided. Prior to the existing triplex being converted from a church, the site had a chain link fence on all 4 sides of the property. And so for this project, new fencing would be installed only along the interior property lines. And then the remaining fencing on the 3rd and Olive frontages have been almost completely removed. The site has a total of 13 parking spaces. The requirement is 2 parking spaces for each multi-family residence with 2 or more bedrooms, and then 1 guest parking space for every 5 units. So for this project, each unit is 2 bedrooms, so they need a total of 12 parking spaces for those 6 units. And then additionally, they would need 1.2 spaces for guest parking. However, the specific plan allows the number to be rounded down to the nearest whole number, which is why they only need 1 guest space. As shown on the site plan, the applicant proposes 6 single-car garages that will each be assigned to one of the units. And then there are also 3 covered carport parking stalls, and then 4 uncovered parking stalls opposite of the covered spaces. As part of the parking lot design, the applicant proposes to install a 2-foot retaining wall on the eastern property line, and this essentially acts as a perimeter to the parking lot, which restricts through access to the alley to the east. The parallel parked cars will be required to make a multi-point turn to exit the site via Olive Street. And then also, I wanted to point out that the garage space closest to the eastern property line the applicant was able to kind of show through this detail that they will have adequate maneuvering area. So they have a no parking zone to make sure that that stall is able to get out and maneuver their way to exit the site. So there's a fair amount of landscaping already installed for the existing triplex, but here's their landscape plan, which shows that additional accent shrubs and ground cover would be put in with the additional triplex building and the associated site improvements. Here are the east and west elevations. So the architectural style of the new 2-story triplex building will match the existing triplex building using the same materials and color palette. Let's see, the buildings have a gabled roof using composite shingles, and then the siding consists of primarily cement plaster and with accent horizontal lap siding. And then overall, the color palette is, as we saw in the other photo slide, it's neutral and consists of the grays and the whites. Here are the north and south elevations. There was some discussion at the DRC wanting more details on architecture. At this time, no additional details beyond what the DRC saw had been provided to staff, but perhaps we can get more input from the applicant during the public hearing component. If there's any other questions that might be outstanding from the Planning Commission, we can hear from the applicant at that time. There are some options before the commission tonight. That first option would be to approve the draft resolution A, approving the development plan, subject to site-specific conditions of approval. Another option would be to approve the project with modifications to that resolution, referring the project back to staff or the DRC for additional analysis. And lastly, deny the project by adopting findings of denial. Staff does recommend option 1 to approve the development plan. And with that, that concludes my staff presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Darcy. So I will go through the commission to see if there are questions of staff. Commissioner Kogler?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few. I was on DRC, so I've had a chance to look at this before. Darcy, the amount of maneuvering room coming out of one of the garages or the carport, on the site plan, there's 27 feet dimension there, which is a fair amount, and should be workable. However, I'm curious that the little template you had on there of the backing and maneuvering, which was geared towards the one garage that was on the east. Yeah, thank you. That shows a vehicle actually backing up substantially into what would be those other spaces there. And if those spaces are occupied based on this template, I'm wondering if there's a problem with people maneuvering in and out of those garages.
Certainly. So I think this might also be a question for the applicant. So we did kind of grill them on the parking to make sure that it was going to function appropriately. I know that they had gone out to the site and marked it up so that they can do some demonstrations. They might be able to share that with you. I think if we go back to the site plan, so we see, do I have a touch screen? Maybe not. But we see in the bottom right corner, so there's that no parking zone. I do agree that it is substantial, where they would be backing up, and perhaps they don't need that entire area. I think based on having that available, they kind of moved everything forward towards Olive Street just in case if there was an issue with backing up. That would be, I think, the intent of that location. And perhaps Jonathan with Larry Gabriel's office, or even Larry Gabriel, can speak more to that.
And I can certainly hold for that until such time as they offer some comments. It's just the 27 feet should be enough maneuvering area, because that's a pretty generous drive aisle for even parallel parking or perpendicular parking on both sides. Just out of curiosity, at the entrance drive, that's where I think this decorative screen fence occurs. What is that screening in that lower left corner?
Sure. So that is for the backflow device.
Okay, that's what I assumed. All right. And then the only other question I had is, I don't think this came up at DRC, but I was pleased to see that apparently all of the drive surface here is permeable pavers. And there was a note that referenced the civil sheets, and we did have civil sheets in our packet, but they were 8.5 by 11 at a very poor resolution, so they were illegible. But I presume, as it states on the site plan, it is a project that includes permeable paving, which is great. That's all I have right now.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Neal?
Nothing at the moment. Thank you.
Commissioner Christensen?
Yes, I just have a question for staff. The existing units that's there, the 3 units there, did they have to have a landscaping plan when that was approved?
Yes, so with their building permit, we do have a landscape plan. They're currently still working, I believe, mostly on the interior, so they haven't requested a final. I think it'll be interesting how much landscaping they've installed. I know that they were working on it when I went to do site notices. So there is some landscaping. I feel like they obviously won't be able to complete the full scope of it until this project gets developed.
Thank you. I wasn't privy to the original building, so that's why I was asking. That's the only questions I have for you right now. Thank you.
Commissioner Gibson?
Yeah, thank you. I had the opportunity, along with Mark, to be on the DRC. So I've already seen this project. So I only have 2 questions that seem like they're coming up. Darcy, do you happen to know the rationale, the reason why the railings were changed for the balcony from what was originally presented?
No, I don't know the answer to that. I think, it's certainly the new building is somewhat hidden, so it's possible that it won't be noticeable, but the staff's direction in the staff report that you'll see is to have it to be consistent railing. So the existing building originally had vertical rails. So they installed, more of a grid pattern, but we haven't finalized yet. So when we get to that point, I think we would need to, fix that. But now that we have this new building, we're looking for some consistency. So I think it may have just, maybe we can ask the applicant, kind of what their logic was behind that.
Okay, all right. So, and my second question is, just picking up on something you said in your presentation, is that you said the eastern side that is borders the alley is going to have a 2-foot retaining wall. Are they then going to have some sort of a wooden fence or something on top of that or next to that to raise it up to a certain level, 5 or 6 feet?
Right. So then the fence detail that's shown on this on the screen where the pink line is, that's where the new fencing will be installed. So they will put it on top of that 2-foot retaining wall. So it'll continue all the way on the eastern and the southern property boundary.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, commissioners. So I will open the public hearing, and it does not look like we have any callers. So I will ask the applicant to tell us about your project. Is the applicant here tonight?
Yeah, I think we have 2 representatives. They may be on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, this is Larry Gabriel. I'm here with Jonathan Brady. We will present this together. Darcy, you did a nice job of giving us an overview on the project. This was an existing church, kind of a background building, if you will. The client had purchased a property and divided the church into 3 2-bedroom units, and I would say sparingly, but got that going. He charged us with putting 3 additional units on the project and making it just a little bit more attractive and detailed for young professionals that he would like to attract to his property. And in our design approach, and given the parking requirements, it seemed to work out very easily for us to put actual garages underneath these units for security and actually cleaning up the site a little bit. In part of this process also, he really didn't want us to do any 3D renderings, and we have rued the day that we agreed to do that. Please bear with us on the elevations. There's more depth in this building than shows in elevations, as I'm sure you guys have seen plenty of elevations in 3D drawings. So I'll let Jonathan go through some of the depth, but if you look at the site plan and floor plan, you'll see that this featured area, the stairway going up to the balconies, is sticking out 8-10 feet in front of the building. So there's depth and some texture to this building that doesn't read in straight elevations. And I will address the parking. If you could go to that, Darcy. We're hampered, and we had our civil engineer actually took his 4-door Mercedes and did a complete U-turn in 24 feet. But that doesn't meet the engineering standards. So what you see here is standard engineering path of travel for a car. And if you look at that car, it's basically a 1965 Fleetwood. So Fleetwood Cadillac. This program comes from the 60s. And so we're kind of stuck with that. So I guess at the very best, it's probably a extended cab pickup truck. But normal backup space is 24 feet. As you guys back out of the City Hall parking lot over there, that's 25 foot backup space. And we've got 27 feet before you get to that parallel parking there. So that's an additional 8 feet on top of that. So I really think we have plenty of room without even going into our crosshatched area and getting the cars out of here. But that was the most critical one at the end down there. And these other parking stalls, I believe, are 24 feet long. They put the parallel stalls, so fairly generous. I think that in unit should be able to get out and about easily. So I'll let Jonathan go through the particulars on the plans, and we'll both be here for questions as they arise. Jonathan is on the phone, so I don't know how you guys access that. Hello?
So staff, are you able to get Jonathan with audio for us?
Larry, what's Jonathan's phone number?
Hang on a second. Jonathan's phone number is, it's 805-76, oh, he's at the office, I'm sorry, 238-9600.
Okay. I think he's on mute.
He's on.
He needs to type in *6 to unmute, apparently.
Yeah.
There you go, we hear you.
This is Jonathan. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, Jonathan. You're quiet, but we can hear you. If you could
All right.
speak as loudly as you can, it'd be great.
Okay. So, yeah, Larry walked us through the parking and through a little bit of the background on the project. Somewhere in the middle there, Larry was mentioning to discuss kind of the depth of the field on the elevations a little bit. Darcy, if you could go back to the elevation sheet. There we go. So, yeah, the 3D model definitely would read the colors and textures a lot better. It's hard to even tell that these are actually colored, but they are color matched to the existing building. So, looking at the north elevation, you can see there's the stucco from right to left, and then it transitions into hardy board in the middle sections. The stairs protrude out towards you, away from the building. And then up on the upper level there where those decks are, that actually moves inward towards the building about 6 to 8 feet. So that kind of gives you kind of a feeling for how it goes. As you proceed more towards the right above where it says north elevation on there, that's actually the throughway through the carport that you could see on the site plan earlier. And the vocabulary we're speaking here is kind of a semi-contemporary farmhouse, taking a look at some of the existing buildings that were in the neighborhood and also trying to kind of pick it up a notch. So that's the elevations. Does anybody have any specific questions about anything else about the project?
Jonathan, maybe it'd be helpful if Darcy pulled up the photograph of the under construction but almost complete first 3 units. So similar materials, similar fenestration, realizing this is without the stairs, but is that correct? Am I saying that properly, Jonathan?
Oh, yes. Yeah, that is correct. The color palette's pulled directly from this. And, yeah, it's exact same materials. Somebody mentioned the railing at one point. Our design, like Larry mentioned, was based off the initial drawings that we saw that went through the DRC for this building. We were not involved in this project. So we were just kind of speaking that vocabulary, and that's where our railing design came from.
It seems to be more in keeping with our style of building as well. I think the other thing that's on the elevation, Jonathan, that's hardy board on the deck actually recedes 3 or 4 feet, does it not?
It does, yes.
Okay, so I think that's the depth I was talking about. Is that the hardy board sits back from the plaster 3 or 4 feet, and the deck sits out another 4 or 5 feet, and then the stairs. So we have some depth in the building, as these guys do here in that front top elevation. The decks protrude out, and the gable comes out towards you and sits, and then the rest of the building sits back on the cross gable about 5 feet, 6 feet, maybe even a little bit more.
Okay.
We've
Anything
been
else you wanted to point out to us?
a couple times. We thought we picked up most everything you guys were looking for. But we're happy to listen to your comments and questions.
Okay, thank you. So there are no public callers, so I will close the public hearing at this time. And I will return to the commission and ask for comments. Commissioner Kogler.
It's I think overall the new addition building fits in quite well with the existing, and I applaud the decision to add garages, both as an appeal to the market that apparently they're trying to attract, as well as to the neighborhood, and keeping things, as they indicate, a little bit neater and cleaner. I really don't have any opposition to this at all. I think it's a reasonable approach for the site, and I think it works quite well.
Thank you. Commissioner Neal?
I too like this project. I think it's in keeping with the scale of the other higher density housing around, and even kind of with the other 3 units to the north meets some of the lower single family homes around the area. So I think it's a nice combination of both, and I think it's a good project, and I will be supporting it this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Christensen?
Yes, I don't really have any issues with the plan. I like the building as well. I think it's nice to see something like that getting developed there. I just had one question that I was trying to understand when I was reviewing this. What is the plan for any runoff? I couldn't see anything in here in regards to that. Is there something that refers to the drainage runoff, water runoff for that site?
Darcy, can you answer that for us?
For the drainage for the site, I'm wondering if Dave Athy wants to speak to that. Do we have Dave?
Hi, this is David Athy, city engineer. So the project will be required to meet the new drainage standards for the city. The paver area in the parking lot will be part of that, I believe, and they'll also have other drainage features around the site to mitigate their runoff. They have to meet the city drainage standards that are contained in our engineering standards. And the applicants on the line, and maybe they can talk about their specific plans.
You got that, Jonathan?
Yeah. I mean, just like David said, the permeable pavers are there, and the civil engineer, obviously will be submitting building plans that will be compliant with current city standards. There's no extreme measures or anything really going on here, and most of the site's pervious as it is.
This project has been hanging around for quite a while, and we actually started construction drawings and had it reviewed concurrently. So this whole set of plans, civil, mechanical, electrical, landscape, architectural, has already been reviewed, commented, and resubmitted. So all of those items have been picked up to meet the city standards. That helps.
Yeah, that does help. I'm glad for the permeation, but maybe somebody can elaborate a little bit more what those city standards were. Is there going to be any city street runoff for that location? I guess I'm not up to date on the city standards enough to know what that generally means. And I apologize, but I wasn't a part of the original civil application of this. So I'm just curious because I have experience on that street, and so water runoff tends to be something of an issue if we do manage to get some rain. And I just was curious if there was more to it than the actual pavers. I understand the pavers are there for permeation, but what about some of the other project? I'm just trying to get a general understanding of where that's going to go. Other than
Well,
that, I don't like the building.
Am I still on? So the original site plan has parking that was 15 cars or so that was already there. The asphalt that we've taken out where the, I think 2 of our units cover basically the parking, 2 of our units and the pavers cover where the parking was. So there was considerable amount of asphalt there to start out with. We've collected the water through these pavers, basically stays on site. And it stays on site and dribbles off as it would through that system. And I probably don't have a good enough specific answer for you, but maybe I'll send it back to Dave Athey and let him address it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Gabler. Commissioner Christensen, basically the city standards ramp up from based on the square footage of impervious surface on the site. So as Mr. Gabriel mentioned, there was a paved parking lot here. So they get credit for taking that out, and the remaining new impervious surface. We have 4 tiers within the city. On the west side of town, you have to comply with 3 of those. They're based on square footage. The first tier is anything over 2,500 square feet of new paving. The next tier is 5,000 square feet, and then the last tier on the west side is 15,000 square feet, approximately. So based on what tier you're in, you have to do different types of mitigations. And so the first tier is basically, route your water to, open areas, let it perk in, try to dissipate the water like that. And then it has to, of course, leave the site in the same manner and location as it's always left. We can't have it just going off to someone's backyard and creating a mess. So that's why we watch drainage pretty closely with new projects. The next tier up is water quality. So they have to clean the water, typically run it through some type of swale or some mechanism to reduce silt and trash and those kind of things before it exits the site. And then lastly, the third tier on this side of town requires bioretention. So retaining water, more water on site, make it mimic more of the natural process if the buildings weren't there. And also includes cleaning the water and just the overall strategy for handling water on the site. And then again, water has to maintain the same characteristics as what occurred before when it leaves the site, location and flow type. So either sheet flow or concentrated. That's the gist of drainage design in the city. If you're on the east side of town, there's another tier, is tier 4. That's 22,500 square feet. When you get to that level and beyond the project, you have hundreds of thousands of square feet. Then we're looking at detention basins and mitigating the 100-year flow back to pre-development levels. That's for a really big site. And this site's not such a fun. And I'd be happy to, if you want to come in and talk about drainage design, we can talk later this week about it too. If you have any questions.
No, I appreciate the explanation of that. I think you're going to assuage some of the fears of the neighbors' concerns below the project. So that's good to know, and I appreciate all the description and information. I think they'll be happy to hear that. Other than that, I don't have a problem with the project. I think it looks great, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for that explanation. And Commissioner Gibson, do you have comment?
Yes, thank you. I find this to be a very attractive project. I think it's going to be a great addition to that neighborhood. I like the additional features, as Commissioner Kogler mentioned. They have features that some of the other projects we've seen don't have: outdoor storage closets, actual garages, covered parking, things like that. I am in agreement with staff recommendations on the issues having to do with the merger of the lot lines. I think that's an absolute necessity. And then also that the two projects coming together, the existing and the new units, have to have that consistency to tie them all together. But overall, I applaud the applicants. This, to me, is a little bit kind of a creative result of, in essence, an infill project in an older kind of decaying area of the city that I think this is going to be a huge bonus for that part of the town. So thank you.
Thank you. And I would concur. I think this is a very well done project. I was very pleased when I went to see the almost existing building, almost complete. And I think it also will be an asset to that neighborhood. I don't think you had any problems at all on that last garage. I'm not worried about that in the slightest. So I would also agree with the resolution as recommended by staff. So at this point in time, I would entertain a motion.
Well, Madam Chair, I guess that's my job. So
I'm glad that it's assigned to you, Jill.
I move to approve draft resolution A, approving planned development 19-14, subject to site-specific conditions of approval.
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
I think actually I heard Commissioner Christensen in there first. Did I hear correctly?
That's fine. This is Kogler. That's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so moved by Commissioner Neal, seconded by Christensen. Does any commissioner have additional comment? Hearing none, I will ask for the roll call vote.
Commissioner Neal.
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen.
Aye.
Commissioner Kogler.
Aye.
Commissioner Neal. Oh, excuse me. Commissioner Gibson.
Aye.
Chairperson Jorgensen.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, thank you. So we will move on to agenda item 3, rezoning 20-02, P20-0070, citywide.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Let's get the PowerPoint up. Let me just check and just make sure the city attorney's on the line. Kimberly, are you out there?
I'm here.
Okay. So this item for the commission is a proposed change to the zoning ordinance. The council's taken some action recently to change camping laws throughout the city. Part of that process will involve potentially removing some sections of the zoning code that conflict with other sections that we're in the process of adopting. The city attorney, Kimberly Hood, is the lead on this whole process, and she is on the line and she's going to be making the presentation. So I'll turn it over to Kimberly, our city attorney.
Good evening. So yes, as Warren noted, this is really what I would consider a zoning code cleanup item to repeal the municipal code section 21.20.232. And this comes about, as Warren noted, the council has taken several actions over the past few months that really got underway in the summer as we were seeing more and more fires in the riverbed. And so one piece of that came up was identifying some needs to update the camping prohibitions. And so on October 6th, the City Council adopted Urgency Ordinance 1103, which added Chapter 7.50 to Title 7, which concerns health and sanitation, to the Paso Municipal Code. And so that chapter and the sections that are added in there address the camping in a little more detail than we have in the zoning code provision that we're asking you to repeal tonight. It does broadly define the areas where camping is prohibited as lands owned or operated by the city, that would basically encompass what's included in the current zoning code provision. Land zoned as open space. And then it also adds, importantly, high fire risk areas and water supply risk areas as identified by your fire chief and your public works director. which we'll get into here shortly. But really, these came about as a result of a Ninth Circuit, which is a federal court opinion in Martin v. City of Boise. And that case held that it was a violation of the Eighth Amendment, which is the cruel and unusual punishment prohibition, to criminally penalize somebody for sleeping, camping, those types of activities on property when there wasn't available alternative shelters. So as a result, we saw a lot of communities, they're obviously struggling with how this applies in their communities. And so we determined that it was important to update the camping prohibitions to acknowledge that restriction, but also allow for more ability to enforce the camping as if needed, but carving out certain areas that we really felt, based on input from the police department and fire department, where it really wasn't appropriate for people to be camping. Obviously, high fire danger areas and areas of danger to water quality, like your riverbed. So this has that carve out in it, but does provide that in some of these other areas, camping may be allowed if there's no available alternative shelters, just to make sure we're in compliance with the Martin v. City of Boise case. Next slide, please. And so this slide just summarizes the urgency findings that the council was reviewing, that are some of the highlights from that meeting regarding the basis for doing it on an urgency basis and moving it into Title VII, the camping prohibitions and updates. I wish I had some slides of some of the photos if I was more adept at PowerPoint that the fire chief included in some of the presentations regarding the riverbed, but they had, as of June, 45 total fires had occurred in the riverbed. Most of the fires not all, but most were a result of campfires. There's also additional concerns with the danger to the city's public water supply. In some of the photos that were provided, you can see where significant encampments have taken shape down in the riverbed with makeshift toilets and disposal of some substances that were of concern to the water quality. So with all of those, part of what the ordinance update included was allowing designation of certain areas, high-risk areas like those where you don't want camping. I would note that, as part of this process, obviously cooperation and working with folks, through this is the most important, but this does allow an important tool for the city to use if it does need to enforce and to try to prevent the encampments from becoming more entrenched again in the riverbed. Can I have the next slide, please? And so again, your current camping ordinance that we're asking you to repeal tonight is in the zoning code, section 21.20.232, which similar to the current chapter 7.50 that was adopted, prohibits camping in certain areas, but it didn't have those procedural and constitutional safeguards that we want to see post Boise. And given the riverbed cleanup efforts that were going on and the fire dangers that were most prevalent in the summer, and now with the winter coming in, we have some concerns with flash flooding and people in the riverbed as well. So that needed to be dealt with fairly quickly. So we moved that forward first because the zoning code amendment requires several steps, obviously, to do. So we dealt first with getting the updated code in place. And then tonight we're asking for your review and approval to recommendation to finish up that cleanup as far as the camping prohibition. Next slide, please. And then just to clarify, what we did determine as part of that, it really seemed to be more appropriate to put the camping prohibition, take it out of the zoning code and put it in chapter 7.50. That title deals with health and safety issues. And what we found as part of this was that, a lot of the things driving the camping prohibitions and efforts right now are all health and safety oriented and not so much land use oriented. So it seemed to make more sense to move that to Title VII. So that was the reason why the move was made. And I think I'm ready for my next slide, please. And so with that, the recommendation is to adopt a resolution recommending that the City Council approve an amendment to Title 21 of the Zoning Code to repeal Section 21.20.232. So this is a fairly simple action that we're asking tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Kimberly. All right, so we'll go through commissioners to see if we have questions of staff. Commissioner Kogler?
Yes, Madam Chair, just one question. I'm curious, consistent with Boise and the ordinance that we're talking about here, what is the test for no available alternative shelter? Is that a one-to-one relationship of those seeking shelter and having shelter available? Or help me understand that a little bit more, if you would, please.
Well, I would love to. Unfortunately, it's not a very clear standard. It's one of those that the court left very open-ended in the decision. So in that case, there was very particular facts where, I think one of those, the lawyers' bad facts can make bad law sometimes, where the individual that was cited and challenging the citation under the Eighth Amendment was able to show that there were absolutely no shelter beds, that he had attempted to maintain, to get shelter, enter a shelter, be admitted. There weren't any beds available, and I believe there was evidence, as I recall, in that case where they knew some of that and they still cited him. And so it really was one more specific to those facts, but they didn't delve into how, what does availability mean. So it's one that we're sort of working on as it plays out, and how, does it mean within your boundaries, outside your boundaries? Is it a one-to-one? So it's one of those that's not a real easy test, unfortunately. And that's, again, why, first and foremost is going to be cooperation efforts and efforts to try to make sure people are aware of services and places to go. So this is sort of your backstop as, you're trying to clean up and make sure people aren't camping in areas that are high danger areas. But it isn't a real one-to-one test that's out there. There's some indeterminate nature to it. Communities are starting to deal with it in different ways. Some are getting more technology available to help be aware of where beds are available and spaces are available that people can go to. And so really Boise was targeted at the criminal sanctions that were being applied when people were sleeping and there wasn't beds available.
Okay, thank you. And then kind of tied back to that, my last question or observation is that at those times in which camping is allowed, is the erection of tents and so forth between the hours of 5 p.m. and 7 a.m., is that new, or was that part of the earlier code section?
That's new. That is a new provision, and one that has sort of come about as cities are trying to work these ordinances. And so recognizing that there may be times where we need to allow the camping and that we can't cite them or require them to move. But at least it gives you some ability to say, okay, well, we may need to allow some camp facilities or camping, but we'll limit the hours then so that it's clearly when you're trying to sleep, somebody should be trying to sleep and can't find shelter for that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Neal, any questions?
No questions this evening on this one. Thank you.
Commissioner Christensen?
Yes, thank you. I think the question I have is just how does this affect the permanency or the potential of permanency of the city tent camp city on the city property? Does this have any effect on that, or can you comment on that?
So the camp, the Borky Flats site, I think is what you're referring to, and I believe that has wrapped up with the winter moving in. That's not really a feasible site or safe site for a transition site, and that's what it was intended, was as a place for people as they're moving out of the riverbed to go and get some services and that. And so that was just a temporary transitional site that I believe has already wrapped up. It helps to have the additional site. They're not directly related, but this camping ordinance does allow the city to have some ability to enforce if need be, but you won't be able to enforce everywhere if there's no shelter. So that will be an additional issue that's being looked at. And I believe Julie Dolan may be on the line, and there are a lot of other efforts to work on additional facilities with the homeless, including the Motel 6 that you may have heard about at the last council meeting.
Yes, Kimberly, thank you. This is Julie. Excuse me. We do have the project underway with the purchase of Motel 6 by the Housing Authority of San Luis Obispo. and a collaboration with People's Self-Help Housing as well as ECHO to transform the Motel 6 into a combination of emergency beds and low-cost housing. What we've been able to do immediately, however, or ECHO's been able to do, is to secure just a few rooms since Kimberly is correct, the Borky campsite is no longer operational. And now we still do have an alternative then for people experiencing homelessness to have shelter at Motel 6. It's very limited, but the intention is to increase the number of rooms just as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I appreciate it. No further questions.
All right, thank you very much. Commissioner Gibson, do you have questions?
I have no questions on this item. Thank you.
All right, and I think my questions have been answered. So I will open the public hearing, but I see that we do not have any public callers. And so I believe I can close the public hearing. I don't think there is any public input at this time. So I will bring this back to the commission for any further comments or discussion, or I will also entertain a motion.
This is Commissioner Christensen. I do have one thing I wanted to kind of ask, and maybe I apologize, I should have asked this before. I'm just curious, where would the city have to store personal items for 90 days? And do they already have a plan for that in mind?
So they do, and part of that, the city council adopted, I believe it was even in 2016, an initial cleanup plan for the riverbed that has been utilized periodically and was updated again this summer, partially in light of the Boise case. And a lot of that was not just Boise, but other cases before that related to due process and making sure that possessions weren't, just thrown away without notice or an opportunity for the individual to claim their items. So that's not an uncommon thing. And so my understanding is that the police department does have a plan for that, has storage, and has been utilizing that as part of the cleanup effort. If there's things that people aren't able to take with them out of the riverbed and need to store for a certain period of time. So a lot of that is more of a constitutional due process issue.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate the explanation.
Sure.
All right. If I don't hear, which I don't, any other comments from commissioners, I'll entertain a motion.
This is Commissioner Gibson. I move that the Planning Commission adopt resolution number PC 20-XXX, recommending that the City Council adopt an ordinance amending Title 21 zoning of the El Paso de Robles Municipal Code to repeal Section 21.20.232 unlawful areas to camp.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. So motion by Commissioner Gibson and second by Commissioner Kogler. Any additional comment? Hearing none, I will ask for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Gibson.
Aye.
Commissioner Kogler.
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen.
Aye.
Commissioner Neal.
Aye.
Chairperson Jorgensen.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, thank you. And now we are on agenda item number 4, General Plan Amendment 19-01 and Rezone 20-03, P19-0053 citywide. May we have the staff report?
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. So Genevieve Charo is our consultant that has been working with the Housing Constraints Committee and Darcy for basically the past 9 months, putting together the housing element. She'll be making the presentation tonight. Genevieve, are you on the line?
I am.
Okay. Are you going to run the presentation or are we going to run it for you?
I will run it. I I can share my screen right now.
Okay, jump on in.
All right. Thank you very much. Good evening, Planning Commission and staff. As Warren indicated, we are here to give you a bit of an update on the housing element and ask for some action on your part as well. I'll start with just an intro and review of what the housing element is. We met back in August, so I'll give a bit of a refresher for the public and also review what we heard from the public throughout the process since we kicked it off back in January, and review some of the components of the draft housing element and look at next steps moving forward in the project update. So just kind of an overview what the housing element is. It is a state required general plan element, but it's a little different than most of the elements of the general plan in that it's the only one that requires a really kind of strict review from a state agency, the Department of Housing and Community Development. And it implements the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, or the RHNA, as we call it. So there's two acronyms that we'll probably hear a lot: HCD, the Housing and Community Development Department, and the RHNA. The Regional Housing Needs Allocation establishes kind of a target total number of housing units that each city is required to show that there's capacity for in the community. So based on the RHNA and other adopted policies, the city has to show that it is in compliance with state law. So the housing element, again, unlike other elements of the general plan, has a very clear legislative intent that the availability of housing is of vital statewide importance, and it's incumbent upon local and state governments to make sure that they are facilitating the development of housing to meet the needs of all economic segments of the community. So this, it's also different in that it requires, state law requires periodic updates of the housing element on an 8-year cycle. So this cycle is due to be, so it must be adopted by cities by December 31st of 2020. If it's adopted on time, you get an 8-year planning cycle. If you miss the deadline, there are some penalties, including the requirement for a 4-year update. So we've kicked off the project back in January with a great public workshop where participants discussed key challenges and opportunities for housing in Paso Robles. And we heard from folks the need to find creative solutions for financing and to really facilitate more housing, as well as the need to be really clear in the regulations and in process streamlining. We also reconvened the Housing Constraints and Opportunities Committee, which has been instrumental in developing the housing element throughout the process, and of course has representation from Planning Commissioners Neal and Kogler. And this group really worked through the entire process, guiding the housing element development, first starting with this meeting in January, looking at what are the constraints and opportunities. And this group really stressed the need to be both realistic and creative with solutions. And that was kind of the framework with which we started the program. At the second meeting, the group looked at potential sites to explore around town to meet the RHNA, sites that would score well for tax credit financing were prioritized by the group, which meant largely on the west side would be priority placement for housing. The group also discussed best practices and what kind of best practices could be incorporated by Paso Robles, looking at case studies from around the country, and really focused on the intent to make it easier to build, provide incentives, and to support efforts to build a capital pool to support affordable housing. We also met virtually to review some of the draft programs and policies that would be going into really creating the housing element. And the group discussed some changes to specific zoning parameters, and came to consensus on the programs that would be included in the housing element. The group also discussed some preliminary early implementation action items, which are largely edits to the zoning ordinance, and has discussed potential work plan for the next year for additional housing initiatives. So back in August, we held a joint Planning Commission and City Council study session to review the draft housing element, which is largely the same as the housing element you see before you. We talked through the primary components of the element in order to have all the decision makers weigh in prior to sending it up to the state HCD for their review, and there's 60 days. So HCD reviewed the draft and recommended a few minor changes for clarity to best address constraints for housing production. And those changes are included in the draft before you tonight. And with these changes, HCD has determined that the housing element meets the requirements of state law. So just kind of a brief overview of the document. The housing element's really intended to be a comprehensive statement by the community of what are the current housing needs and what are the future housing needs that we need to meet, and what are those actions that we can implement to better provide affordable housing and housing in the community. So this graphic kind of shows the different chapters of the housing element. The first chapter, the introduction, is where we really summarize the review of the public input that we've received. But chapter 2, the circle in the middle, is really the heart of the plan. This is the goals and policies and implementing actions, and it is a core component of what HCD reviews. We'll go over some of the notable implementation actions tonight as well. Chapter 3 is a regional chapter. This is a regional vision for housing. This is unique to San Luis Obispo, and it's the same chapter that's reflected in all jurisdictions in the county. And it really states the regional goal towards providing affordable housing and meeting infrastructure needs, jobs, housing balance, and regional collaboration in general. Chapter 4 is the needs assessment, where we look at demographic trends and housing trends and how that has changed over the past 8 years. Chapter 5 is the constraints component, and this is another piece that is quite highly scrutinized by HCD in their review, where we look at the zoning standards and the processes that are in place and how they could constrain development, as well as other non-governmental factors such as the market that can constrain development. Chapter 6 is the resources and sites inventory, and that chapter is where the city shows how the regional housing needs allocation, that target construction goal, can be met with existing land use policy under existing zoning on vacant and underutilized sites in town. Chapter 7 reviews the previous accomplishments, so of the past housing element cycle to date, so the 2015 to 2021 period, and looks at how well the city was able to meet some of those goals and targets that were set forward. So all of those components go to implement the housing plan. Some of the notable housing programs in the housing plan: the first is to provide adequate sites, again, to meet that regional housing needs allocation. The city showed in the housing element that it can be accommodated under existing zoning using vacant and underutilized high density sites and potential for ADU development. There's also, before you tonight, some concurrent zoning amendments that were developed throughout the process of the housing element with the HCOC. This was one of the topics, the mixed use overlay. The HCOC discussed this and potential areas that could be re-examined in town that currently don't allow residential, but seem to be really good places for it. The group discussed this a lot and recommended that the mixed use overlay be modified to provide more flexibility. and increase the density to encourage development and support some of the types of housing that are most in demand today. So in addition, it was recommended to apply this overlay to two new sites over at Woodland Plaza. So these are both vacant areas, the JC next to JCPenney in MU2 and over on Niblick as well. So this rezoning is included with the housing element as kind of an immediate action item. Another concurrent zoning amendment that's being brought forward is to amend the zoning ordinance to remove some constraints and to streamline development. The first is to modify how height is measured in the multifamily R zones. So rather than to require both the height limit to be listed in terms of feet and in stories, to provide a little bit more flexibility and clarity, this proposes that the number of stories parameter is deleted, but the height in feet remains the same. To provide a little bit more flexibility for projects, there's a requirement right now for multifamily projects with 32 or more units to provide a community room or a daycare center, and that was recommended to be increased to 40 or more units. There's also some changes recommended to clarify how manufactured housing should be allowed, removing some definitions about mobile homes, and just to really clarify that manufactured housing is allowed as a residential use. And to annually monitor how effective these programs are. There's also a zoning amendment included in the package that is to remove a footnote in a density table for a particular parcel that, although the parcel is zoned for R3, it establishes an alternative density for this site. So this program would remove that constraint and apply the existing R3 zoning as it is listed throughout the rest of the code. Another measure brought forward by the HDOC was the introduction of fractional density units. So this largely mirrors the methodology that San Luis Obispo uses. This program encourages smaller units and affordability by design by assuming smaller units are actually a fraction of a density unit, so doing a slightly different calculation. So studios and one bedrooms that are less than 600 square feet are counted as half a unit. 600 to 1,000 square feet would be 2/3 of a unit, and any 2-bedroom dwellings are considered a full unit. So the benefit of this is to really encourage smaller units, providing a clear incentive for that, and also to provide some surplus density units so that the land use element identifies potential new units in various areas in Paso Robles under the existing general plan. So with these new fractional units, and because a portion of new multifamily units would be small and less than really one unit, there will be this resulting new surplus of units that we've calculated to be 347. So this is assuming different calculations went into this to assume how many units would be smaller. We assume more smaller units would occur on the west side than the east side based on previous project unit sizes. And so we use those calculations to estimate and develop the new surplus density unit projection. Included as well as a zoning amendment is to review the Planning Commission threshold of review. As you know, currently requiring Planning Commission review for 5 or more units, and revising that threshold to more than 10 units. This was as discussed with the Planning Commission and City Council back at the joint session. We have a few new programs that'll be new for you that you didn't see in the last joint session. These are recommended by HCD as new revisions based on their review. They recommend that the development plan findings be reviewed in conjunction with the objective design standards to make sure that the findings, oops, sorry, I'm on the wrong I'm thinking about the wrong thing ahead of time. They recommended parking standards for smaller units. So to review standards on the east side, which require higher numbers of parking for 1-bedroom and studio units, then they felt that was a constraint to development. So this program calls the city to review those standards and modify as needed. So it doesn't identify particularly yet what that modification is, but really to consider what kinds of flexibility can be provided to really encourage those smaller unit sizes on the east side, and make sure that those parking standards are not a constraint. So the other one recommended by HCD is to look at the development plan findings and make sure that they really are objective findings that are implemented for multifamily projects. This program also recommended by HCD to really just ensure that the city is continuing to be equitable in engagement and affirmatively furthering fair housing. That's a goal of housing element law with revisions to state law, and to really just encourage and use a wide variety of methods to make sure that folks are engaged and knowledgeable about housing policies and housing projects. HCD also identified that we should take a look at the definition of family and make sure that it does comply and is not, that it is inclusive and allows for different types of folks to live in a space and doesn't preclude different arrangements for households, including group homes. HCD, oops, sorry. They also asked for a few clarifications throughout, and those were included in the draft you have before you tonight. So just kind of reviewing the input we've received to date, which really is the foundation for this housing element. The HCOC met 5 times, and community workshops, as well as Planning Commission and City Council joint workshops, really helped hone and develop the housing element entirely, with state HCD review occurring just this fall, as well as environmental analysis, bringing us to you tonight for your consideration of the draft document. Thinking forward, assuming an approval, a recommendation for approval, there's still a few more steps in the housing element update process. The City Council hearing is scheduled for December 1st. Again, that deadline is December 30th. To meet the state mandated deadlines. HCD does have 90 days to review it after that happens, to make sure that all the changes that were agreed upon during the consultation process are included. And there's some of the items that we discussed tonight and some others that moving forward you'll be seeing coming as well. The HCOC has looked at what their 2021 work plan can be. The city has secured grants through SB2, LEAP, and REAP for some of this implementation. And the HCOC also discussed the desire, the need for a comprehensive zoning ordinance cleanup, and a consideration of boundaries and a cleanup of the Uptown plan to potentially expand a little bit of boundaries around the Uptown plan to include some of the kind of very similar neighborhoods within the regulations for the Uptown plan. So that concludes the presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you. So let's go through the commission and see if there are questions. I suspect there are quite a few. Let's begin with Commissioner Koch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, having been a part of the Housing Constraints and Opportunities Committee and going through all of this, I really don't have any questions at this point in time, other than maybe to a quick note and a compliment to staff and the consulting team we're pulling together all of the ideas that were expressed and making them into this cohesive element of the plan. And I think it's very well done. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Commissioner Neal.
I echo Commissioner Kobler's comments completely. I too was on the committee and felt that it was amazingly well run and handled, and compliment both staff and the consultants on their fine work. Thank you.
Commissioner Christensen.
I have no questions. I just want to say thank you for doing all this work, and I appreciate you explaining it pretty well. This is the second time I've really revisited this, so thank you.
Commissioner Gibson.
I'll echo my fellow commissioners' comments. I read through the revisions to the draft element in response to the HCD, and I really have no questions. Again, just applaud and recognize all the hard work that was done by everybody involved.
Okay, I guess we'll make up for the lack of questions with a whole bunch. The mixed use overlay increasing from 20 units to 30 units per acre, are there other areas in the city besides the two new proposed sites by JCPenney and Highland Center where this would apply?
So the draft right now applies just those two sites. So while the revision to the zoning ordinance would change the allowance of any potential future mixed use overlays as well from 20 to 30 units to the acre, it is only currently being applied on those two sites.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't follow that. So other existing mixed use overlay sites could not do that. Is that correct? But it would be open for other future sites. Am I understanding that?
Oh, that's a good clarification. It would actually, I believe it would actually apply to existing applied mixed use overlay. Warren, do we have it applied in existing places that are not currently constructed?
So there are some existing areas that were built under the mixed use overlay. Those currently are under development plans, and they're all completed construction. So the only way they could take advantage of the higher densities, they would have to go back through the entitlement process. They would also need to get an allocation of additional density from the city council. So it's not that they couldn't, but they would have to go through some discretionary steps with the planning commission and city council to actually realize any additional density.
Okay, thank you. Then the fractional density, I've read this a number of times and I'm still not clear. Does it apply only in R3 or does it apply in other zones as well?
It would apply in all multifamily zones. So anywhere that multifamily is allowed, the fractional density could apply.
Okay. And then on page 84, the table 1, fractional density unit calculation, surplus general plan density units. Could you just clarify for us that the surplus units are 345, but then in the paragraph under that, it says these additional surplus density units would allow up to 690 additional dwelling units in the city. Can you clarify that, how those two numbers correlate?
Sure. Yeah, I could see how that could be confusing. And Warren, please step in if I misstate. But because there would potentially be 345 surplus available units, if those were to all be developed as less than 600 square foot units, those could all technically be considered half a density unit. So it could be doubled to 690. So that's how it kind of plays out to the doubling. We made assumptions to get to that number about the fact that it's unlikely to be anywhere near that high. We had, assumptions about based on previous projects and their size, and then assumed a factor acknowledging that this will be an incentive, but still understanding that on the east side, units are not likely to be all coming in under 600 feet.
Okay. That makes sense, but I'm still not entirely clear in that. I'm going to make up a completely hypothetical that I'm extremely unlikely to happen, but just to make it extreme so that maybe it can be made clear. So on the east, on some place in town, somebody wants to build Son of Beechwood, and they want to have 690 full-size 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, 2-car garage dwelling units. Conceivably, could the city approve them doing that with the 690?
No. The city could conceivably allow 345 3-bedroom units on the east side, but not,
okay.
Or 690 studios.
Okay, all right. Thank you. That makes sense. I know that at the last time when we had the joint review meeting with the city council, the issue of the 11 units that there needs to be 11 units before a development plan is required as opposed to 5 units now. And I remember expressing my dismay at that and the lack of community participation and review that entails. I guess that's already moved on, and I can still be dismayed, but it's not going to help me any. But what I still don't understand is, okay, so it's 11 units or more have a development requirement for a development plan and review by the Planning Commission. I'm going to develop a project with 10 units, so I don't have to deal with the Planning Commission. But do I still need to? What do I do? Can I develop in any manner by right? Or is there still a staff review and all the elements of what would otherwise be called a development plan required?
Sure. So multifamily development projects with 10 or fewer units, they would still be subject to site plan review that would go to the DRC. And that procedure is going to be modified so that there will be a public noticing requirement associated with that DRC approval.
All right, and that's for any multifamily?
Any multifamily of 10 or fewer.
Okay, thank you. Then my next question is regarding the child care provision. The first 5 of SLO County letter asked to integrate child care needs into planning processes and support the provision of affordable on-site child care facilities, yet we're increasing before that needs to be done from, was it 32 to 40 units? How do those two go together? Or are we just saying to first 5, thank you for your input, but this is what we're doing? I mean, what's the balance between those two?
Good point. So we did, in response to that letter, we received that letter while we were in communication with HCD before they had written their letter. And so we did propose to add a policy H-1.4 to integrate the child care needs of those who live and work in Paso Robles into the city's planning process, and to help support the provision of affordable child care facilities near housing and transportation and employment centers, and to promote intergenerational facilities like they recommended in their letter. So that is integrated into the policy program here. We discussed with the HCOC that threshold of 32 units or 40 units, and the provision of a community room or a space that could be used as a daycare, such as that, we heard from affordable housing developers that the kind of threshold to make that something that can pencil is for actually closer to 40 units. So that's why that revision is put in place to kind of reflect what makes sense in affordable housing developments.
Okay. with the new policy, then, are there any incentives for adding some kind of child care provision, or are we just saying we really like it, we hope you do it?
The policy itself doesn't have any specific teeth, but it is something that the city can point to show, to encourage more of those types of uses within housing and employment, to really make that clear as part of your policies.
Okay, but really no
teeth.
No. Yeah, that's too bad. Okay, and then the manufactured housing, and I understand that wording is from the state, and that's that. But what is our design review? If someone chooses to bring in a double wide, what I would call mobile home, but by state definition is manufactured home, not put it on a foundation and park it in the lot next to my R1 house, does the city have any say in that, about how that's done and the quality of the facility?
You can require it to have a foundation, but you need to treat it as you would any other residential use. So a single family home, it would need to be treated the same way. So at whatever process a single family home would go through, a manufactured home should go the same.
Okay, and that is purely state direction, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then my last comment is really picky, but I think it does change meaning. And it's on attachment 3, draft resolution C, page 300. It's the kind of the middle of the page, the last whereas on that page on B. It says, and I know this is picky, but bear with me because I do think it's of consequence. It says allow residential, commercial, comma, or mixed use development in the mixed use overlay. I think it's supposed to say residential, comma, commercial, because residential, commercial, I don't know, is that mixed use? What is that? So I just asked that be corrected.
Thank you. Yes, that is a typo. That's a good clarification. It was very clear from the HCOC that they wanted to provide the most flexibility, so allowing both standalone commercial, standalone residential, or mixed use within the overlay.
Okay. All right, thank you. And that's all of my questions. So we do not have any callers, so we have don't need the public hearing.
Madam Chair, we actually have, yes, I think, a couple interested parties that are members of the Teams meeting. I think David Cook from the Housing Authority may be wanting to make a comment.
Oh, all right. I didn't see that. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Dave, I think you're on mute.
There we go. How's that?
We can hear you.
Okay. All right. Good evening, Madam Chair and Planning Commissioners. It's been a good meeting, and like Warren said, I'm just here to kind of comment, and also I'll have my partner Lori Doyle, I believe, is on the line too. We just want to comment on the mixed use overlay, that we have an opportunity over on a vacant lot next to the J.C. Penney's, where we're under, we're in escrow, and we're moving forward. We're going to meet with the ROC committee next Monday for a 79-unit senior site, and we think it's a great opportunity and timing for this general plan amendment to make this from commercial to mixed use. So the timing was good there, and we think it's a great senior site, and it's going to be a great addition to that shopping center. It's going to be revitalized a little bit. Everybody knows J.C. Penney's is going out, Staples is going out. So we think we're going to be able to repurpose this and revitalize that end of the project. It's a very walkable site. It's going to be it has access to pretty much everything: grocery shopping, transportation, McDonald's, There's other restaurants there it's going to have access to the Riverwalk. So we think it's going to be it's going to be a great site, and it's going to be a great addition to the community on that site. So, and again, we think it's a great opportunity, and the timing for this building, the housing element, to get this approved with the zoning overlay, so that will allow us to proceed. And we're planning on trying to submit it for a tax credit project first quarter of 2021. So that's about all I have to say, unless you have some questions for me. Or Lori, you might want to add something as well.
Hi, good evening. Can you all hear me? This is Lori Doyle.
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. Thank you again for allowing us, Dave and I, to have an opportunity to comment on the housing element that is before you this evening. Again, my name is Lori Doyle. I'm with Affordable Housing Development Corporation, and we have partnered most recently with Dave Cook and the Paso Robles Housing Authority on the Oak Park redevelopment. And we are excited to be back working with one of our favorite cities in California and one of our favorite partners to bring another much needed affordable housing community to the city. As was mentioned earlier, this site is obviously very underutilized and hasn't been utilized at all. And as we all know, these big box centers are probably going to be something of the past based on just recent circumstances. And we are excited that the city is being so proactive in their housing element to make opportunities like these to be able to do a mixed use affordable housing community within such close proximity to such desired services. So this is going to be a wonderful step in the right direction, and like I said, very proactive. I do business in a lot of cities in California, and this is, you should be very proud of your city for taking these actions early on in the process, because I know that there's going to be a lot of cities that are following your lead. So thank you again for the opportunity. I echo everything that David said earlier about our specific site, but again, I would just like to commend the city and their consultants for doing such an amazing job on this housing element, to be very creative and to anticipate the needs of their community. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, David and Lori.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else, Warren, that is waiting to speak for the public hearing?
Not that I'm aware of, but why don't you just ask just to clarify if anyone does want to speak.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this matter? Okay, I will then close the public hearing and bring the matter back to the commission. I will just ask commissioners if there's anyone who has any further comments before we go to a motion. Okay, then I will be happy to entertain a motion on this matter.
This is Commissioner Christensen. I move that we adopt the 2020 General Plan Housing Element, GPA 19-01, for the adoption with implementing the zoning ordinance amendments, RZN 20-03, and identification and allocation of Cycle 2 surplus density units, P19-0053. I hope I did that correctly.
So just to clarify, Madam Chair, there's actually 4 resolutions we need recommendations on. They're on page 87, so it'd probably be good to go through the resolutions one at a time.
Thank you. I'll start then. I make a motion that we approve Resolution A, recommending City Council adopt a mitigated negative declaration pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act.
I'll second the motion.
All right, so moved by Commissioner Christensen and seconded by Commissioner Gibson. Any discussion? May we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Christensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson?
Aye.
Commissioner Neal?
Aye.
Commissioner Kogler?
Aye.
Chairperson Jorgensen.
Aye.
Resolution A passes on a 5-0 vote.
This is Commissioner Christensen. I make a motion we approve Resolution B, recommending City Council approve the general plan housing element amendment.
I'll second the motion.
All right, so moved by Christensen and seconded by Gibson. May we have a vote?
Commissioner Christensen.
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson.
Aye.
Commissioner Neal.
Aye.
Commissioner Kogler.
Aye.
Chairperson Jorgensen.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
This is Commissioner Christensen. I make a motion that we approve Resolution C, recommending City Council approve zoning code text and map amendments.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so motion by Commissioner Christensen and second by Commissioner Gibson. May we have the roll call vote?
Commissioner Christensen.
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson.
Aye.
Commissioner Kogler.
Aye.
Commissioner Neal.
Aye.
Chairperson Jorgensen.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, so
So
that
there's
was Resolution D, correct?
a resolution D still.
This is
Okay.
Commissioner Christensen. I recommend we approve Resolution D, recommending City Council approve identification of 345 Cycle 2 surplus density units and allocation of surplus density units to parcel 009-814-044 and parcel 009-814-035.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so moved by Commissioner Christensen, seconded by Commissioner Gibson, and may we have the vote?
Commissioner Christensen.
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson.
Aye.
Commissioner Neal.
Aye.
Commissioner Kogler.
Aye.
Chairperson Jorgensen.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. That concludes all the actions on this item.
Okay, very good. Thank you, everyone. All right, so then our next item is discussion items. Do we have any of those, Warren?
Let me double check. There are no discussion items tonight.
Okay, so then we'll move on to the consent calendar. We have minutes from DRC and from the Planning Commission, and I have one comment I would like to make on DRC, October 19th, DRC item number 2. I recused myself on that item, and at the conclusion of the minutes on the action, it does say the DRC minus Chairperson Jorgensen approved the final details for the project, but I would really prefer that somewhere in there it does indicate that I recused myself.
We can add that.
Okay, thank you. Is there a
Madam-
motion for the consent calendar?
Madam Chair, I need direction from either you or staff. So
Okay.
obviously, I was not on the Planning Commission on February 25th, so I can't really give an opinion as whether those are accurate or not. Should I still go ahead and vote, or how do you want to handle that?
Yeah, Warren, what, thank you. I was going to ask that as well. How should we handle that?
So we would recommend that the commissioner just abstain from that one. So we could adopt that one with a separate motion just to clarify.
So are we going to have a quorum if Christensen and Gibson? Because Ty, you weren't on in February either, right?
I believe are you talking about, no, I don't know that I was at that meeting.
No, that's before
I think you,
Gibson and
Yeah.
was seated or Christensen was seated.
so are 3 commissioners adequate to approve this?
Yes.
Okay, that makes it good. So we'll handle it as a separate motion then. So I would ask then for a motion, let's do this separately, a motion for the DRC minutes.
So moved, Madam Chair.
All right, Commissioner Kogler, is there a second?
I'll go ahead and second that, Madam Chair.
Okay, Commissioner Gibson, may we have the vote?
Just to clarify, did that motion include the change to the October 19th minutes?
Yes, it did.
And the second accepts that.
Commissioner Kogler?
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson?
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Neal?
Aye.
Chairperson Jorgensen?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I will move approval of the Planning Commission meeting minutes for February 25th, 2020.
all right, thank you, Commissioner Neal. And second?
I'll second that, Kogler.
All right, Commissioner Kogler, thank you. And may we have the vote?
Commissioner Neal?
Aye.
Commissioner Kogler?
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson?
I abstain.
Commissioner Christensen?
I believe I need to abstain.
Chairperson Jorgensen?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0 with 2 abstentions.
All right.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, please.
I'd like to approve Planning Commission minutes for September 8th, 2020, as well as October 27th, 2020.
Is there a second?
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. So moved by Commissioner Neal, seconded by Commissioner Kogler. May we have the vote, please?
Commissioner Neal?
Aye.
Commissioner Kogler?
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson?
Aye.
Chairperson Jorgensen?
Aye.
That motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. And then other reports.
Okay, so we have on the agenda just a standing report from Housing Constraints and Advisory Committee. So obviously tonight we've made significant progress with the recommendation for the housing element moving forward to the City Council. As part of next year's work plan, we have received a number of grants from the state and from the county for housing implementation tasks. So we are going to be moving forward with a series of zoning code updates and changes. As that process moves forward, the Housing Constraints and Opportunities Committee will be involved in that process. So we do actually expect that committee to be fairly busy starting early next year. Other reports, there's been some questions about just what the Development Review Committee rotation schedule is. So what we've decided is we're just going to add the schedule to each agenda so it's clear who's on for each month. And then this gives the commission the opportunity to make any adjustments that are needed for the upcoming month. So we've listed November and December. On our next agenda, we'll include the proposed schedule for next year, and then the commission can adjust and adopt that as well.
Good. Thank you for doing that. That's a great idea. And I have, unfortunately, a change. I am on for November, but November 16th, I just found out today I have an appointment that I need to keep. So is there another commissioner who could cover me just that one day? It's next Monday.
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Gibson. I can cover for you on the 16th.
Thank you. And I will owe you one next year on whatever month you're on. Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay, so was there anything else, Warren? Is that?
Nope, those are the reports.
Cover it. Good. Okay, thank you. So let's do Planning Commissioner comments. Commissioner Kogler.
Thank you. Just one comment, which is really kind of a request. I'm wondering if staff, maybe on an annual basis, could schedule an update on the homeless situation and the homeless activities for the Planning Commission. What brought that to light for me was the legal change we made tonight to the ordinance created 1,000 questions in my mind about this topic, but not simply on the legal aspect of the ordinance change. And so I focused my questions just on that. But as the hotel has come into prominence as a facility, I find in the community with friends and neighbors, if I get questions because they know I'm on the planning commission, therefore supposed to know something about everything. I don't when it comes to homeless, and it would be helpful if we at least on some increment of time had an update. And I know that changes very rapidly, but it's a critical community issue from both the land use and the health perspective. And I think it would be helpful to be better informed. So that's my request. Thank you.
So that sounds like a good idea. If we could get commission consensus that that is the desire to annually agendize some sort of homeless report, we could then work forward with scheduling that.
This is Commissioner Christensen. I'd like to echo his concern as well. I get a million questions on similar topics, and it would be nice to be more knowledgeable. And to be honest with you, it might be, if there's something major that is coming into the works, it would be kind of nice to know a little bit sooner. So maybe it might have to be more than once a year, in my opinion. Anything would help, is what I'm saying.
I would agree with that. I would very much like to have it as well, but I don't really, I don't know that annually is the way I would like it. Yeah, I think we need it as appropriate, however that might be phrased, or as information becomes available.
This is Commissioner Gibson. I would echo the chair's comments. I validated, support the other comments as well. It just seems, in reading some of the posts that are coming from various corners of our population, that there seems to be a lack of understanding or knowledge as to what's actually going on. And so not only would I think it'd be beneficial to the members of the Planning Commission, but the idea that there's maybe even an opportunity for the public to ask questions and gain clarity or give some input on what their thoughts and feelings are, especially as Commissioner Christensen indicated, if there's a major project or something coming up that people felt that they were being heard, and there was more openness or opportunity might be the better word, for people to gain knowledge and have some input.
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Kogler, if I may offer another comment. I guess I just threw out my initial thought as being annual, and it certainly doesn't have to be that. It could be on an as appropriate basis. I just don't know how one interprets when it's appropriate, and to make sure that doesn't fall through the cracks. My thinking on this is more informational for the commission. I think we would have to be careful that we're not create a public forum whereby the Planning Commission is somehow becoming the spokes group of homelessness and collecting comments and issues. We'd have to have a very specific task before us before we would ever be put in that role. So again, my thinking is more on the lines of tell us more about what's going on, keep us informed, and then certainly at the times where it's appropriate and where it's within the proviso of what we are chartered to do, we as a Planning Commission could step in and do that.
This is Commissioner Neal. I agree with Commissioner Kogler and would like to see something on a semi-regular basis.
Is that adequate consensus for you, Warren?
Yeah, that's very helpful, and we'll move ahead with getting something scheduled.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Neal, comments?
I currently will not be at the November 24th meeting. So that's my only comment. That may change though.
Are we having a November 24th meeting?
No, actually, due to the holiday schedule, we will have no meeting on the 24th of November due to Thanksgiving. And then I believe December 22nd, before Christmas, we're going to be canceling that commission meeting as well. So we will only have one more meeting this year.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Commissioner Christensen, any comments?
I had a comment and I totally forgot what it was, but I just wanted to say thank you for tonight. Everybody's help. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. I wanted to say thank you to staff for providing more of that background on the zoning change, and I really appreciated that. It was helpful for me to get a better understanding of it. So I want to say thank you.
Great, thank you. And Commissioner Gibson.
I have no additional comments. Thank you.
Okay, I don't really either, except to thank everyone. I think we got a lot covered tonight, and I appreciate staff, and I appreciate the commissioners' attention to detail on all of these important projects. So may we have staff comment?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, our next meeting will be on December 8th. Right now, it looks like we have an industrial building on Airport Road potentially on the schedule, possibly a time extension and a use permit. And that will be our last meeting of this year. We'll be looking forward to next year. We'll be starting the recruitment process for Planning Commission reappointments. So I believe we have 2 seats that are going to be up for reappointment. I believe it's Castillo and Neal. So we'll be working with the commissioners as well as the public to make sure everybody understands what the application process is. It'll be the same schedule as last year, where the council will interview and appoint in February. The new commissioners get sworn in first meeting of March. So keep that in mind as coming up. In terms of projects, we talked tonight, or we heard from the Housing Authority about their interest in doing the project next to JCPenney's. That is an application that we do expect to move forward fairly quickly. We actually have another housing project on that other mixed-use site next to Highlands Church that was recently applied for as well. So that's moving forward. There's a couple downtown projects that are moving forward through the system. Likely will be early next year that they'll be ready for the Planning Commission to look at. And then in terms of the Gateway annexation project, we are working with LAFCO to get that ready for a hearing. We have submitted the application. They've given us back a incomplete letter where they need some additional information. So we're working right now on getting that application completed so that we can get to a hearing on that one as soon as possible. And I think that kind of completes my update. Darcy, anything else? Darcy says no. I think that completes staff's report.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Christensen, I make a motion for adjournment.
Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Christensen and Commissioner Gibson. And I will assume consensus. And thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of the evening.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Happy Thanksgiving, all.
Yes, good night.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye.